some magic happens where your brain believes it more, can hear it more, can use one or the other sense to be able to fill in the gaps that the other one's not getting, and ultimately give you a more immersive, you could say on one side, but also just a more accurate representation of the sound.
All right, Dr. Castro.
Yes.
So we just briefly talked about how embodied sound takes the full advantage of tactile information in audio. But obviously what we know is audio is just more than what is felt, and it's also more than what is heard. But the power really comes from both simultaneously.
Yes.
So can we talk a little bit about how your research on that crossover point of feeling to hearing and why that is so important to create new types of sound reproduction that leverage both because of the limitation that exists today?
Yeah, and I think the key word you mentioned there is simultaneously.
Yeah.
That it makes a big difference. There's an experiment that you can do where basically if you're watching like a music video and you like delay the audio a little bit and then like try to enjoy the music video, you won't. I mean, some of you will, but we don't want to associate with you people. I'm just kidding. But no, it's a disorienting thing when you see something and you expect to hear it and then you don't, and then it comes later, and then your brain starts to kind of like adjust for it, and then that suddenly becomes normal, and then when it snaps back, it's like way too fast, and your brain is plastic and it's able to adapt to things, but there's a certain expectation when something happens that you're expecting the other senses to happen. If I drop a ball on this stage right here, we expect to hear it hit, we expect to feel it happen at the same time, and we expect to also see it as it happens. So when we see the event happen, there are other events that we associate with it. So that type of experience is multi-sensory, and when things happen with multiple senses, it reinforces the event that's happening.
Yep.
When you hear someone talk, it's more impactful to see and hear someone talk, which is why we're doing this video series to begin with. Right? When you see, hear, and feel someone talk, that also helps you believe that they're present with you at the same time. So there's a sense that one sense is good, two senses is great, but if you can get three senses together out of your five senses, then there's more senses telling you that something is happening than there are telling you that it's not happening. Yeah. Well, once we get smell-o-vision and super, so yeah, that'd be great. But up until now, that all three of those happening at the same time is the crux of multimodality, which has been realistically my main focus of the research, is how multimodality not just doubles, but exponentially increases the amount of information, the quality of information, the intelligibility of the information that you get from having those senses put together, as opposed to having them separate or happening not quite simultaneously. For example, if you're listening to music and the haptics of the watch or something like that kind of like associate themselves with the beat timing, you might associate them together in your brain and you say, great, there's a buzz that happens every time the beat happens. Great, I can associate those two together and it's a better experience. But the timing of that is not exactly the same because it has to translate the sound to a signal, send the signal to the thing, and then otherwise has to delay the audio in order to get to it. It's not gonna be exactly the same just in timing wise, let alone fidelity, let alone the actual discrepancy of it. But when all those things are together, when the feeling and the hearing of it is exactly matching the shape of the transient, the shape of the sound wave, all frequencies that you can both hear and feel across the same spectrum are there, then some magic happens where your brain believes it more, can hear it more, can use one or the other sense to be able to fill in the gaps that the other one's not getting, and ultimately give you a more immersive, you could say on one side, but also just a more accurate representation of the sound.
Got it. So, for example, the embodied sound technology that we invented, we're looking at, let's give you access to all information. That information, as far as you can go through tactile, but as a natural byproduct, there's the acoustic range that comes out of that.
Right.
And if you're giving that from a central source, so let's say some of the stuff we've done before, let's say a stadium seat, and you're watching a basketball game, because you're watching the basketball game, so you got at least a visual mode here, and then you're seeing the basketball get dribbled, and you're seeing it hit the court, and the vibration sound event that comes out of the basketball hitting the court is acoustic, so you want to be able to hear that, and you also want to feel that, and now you actually feel like I'm right next to the basketball, even if you're all the way in the nosebleeds, due to the fact that you're seeing, hearing, and feeling it, so it becomes visceral and connected to you because you have all that information coming to your body.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's a perfect example and a perfect use case of something like this. The embodied sound, by definition, just creates all of this of the auditory sound that we would expect from the human hearing range, and just presents it in vibrational mode as well. Just because you can't feel maybe a part of it, does not mean that it's not necessary, or that at some point it will be. Like as you use it, the more you are exposed to vibration, the more you become sensitive to it.
Yep.
And so the more sensitive you are, the more your range expands. So over time, you actually get more and more and more advantage out of that vibration. We don't know what the theoretical limit is of how much people can feel vibration. Right now, we have it clocked at about 5,000, but that's also largely due to the mechanical natures of stuff we're using. But in the future, we might be able to use different devices, different components, and that range might be much easier to feel later on down the road. So we're planning everything now to be future-proofed, so that way in the future, if we have these new devices that can extend that frequency range even more, that people can then be able to have this super ultra realistic experience. When they're at the basketball game, they're going to feel like they're themselves dribbling the basketball up and down the court, even though they're all the way up in the nosebleeds.
It's a pretty wild future, and definitely a very different take on the world of audio. It's not haptics, it's not tactile, it's not audible. It's really just how do you combine them all and give you all the information.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I'm excited to keep building this company.
I hope so.